Always have a positive intention when you come on stage to play, because the music has the power to help uplift people, lift their spirits up. So, you have that intention. It certainly goes out into the area you're playing in.
Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, yeah.
This is so exciting. We go back many, many years, and I've had the chance of hearing you perform at such intense concerts and performances. We've had the chance of doing clinics together and performances.
Yeah.
And every time I hear you play, it is like a lesson in opening up my mind. I heard you once play a 45-minute drum solo, about 1,000 people in the audience, and everyone was on the edge of their seat because they didn't know what was going to happen next. So it was kind of like expect the unexpected. And it was a lesson in creativity that I'll never forget because it was just so exciting, and 45 minutes went by really fast because of that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, yeah.
You are at such a high level, Jack, of performance and artistic expression. Where did music enter your life at the beginning?
Well, it entered my life when I was 4 through the influence of my uncle, Roy Wood, who himself was a big jazz fan.
Yeah, sure.
So I used to listen to a lot of his records when I was 4 or 5, and listen to Tommy Dorsey and Duke Ellington. Actually, we had a Victrola, the Victrolas.
Oh, the old wind-up Victrola.
I mean, we had a big one too, a professional, a big console too.
Yeah.
But I liked it. It was one of those where you could store the records and open up the cover, and the sound would get bigger.
Yes.
Anyway,
yeah.
But I fell in love with jazz music, at that particular age, not knowing that's what it was.
Yeah.
It's just I was just drawn to the music then, and then I started taking piano lessons. Piano I took because my grandmother knew a piano teacher who told her that I had perfect pitch. My grandmother bought a spinet piano for me, and then I started taking lessons. My first piano lessons were not happening. I had an old crotchety piano teacher who smacked my hands when I didn't play the right notes, and I was really, really not happy about that. My grandmother had a friend who lived around the corner who was using modern, for those times, I guess, techniques to help, young people read music. She would give like scores for the way you play the pieces, or maybe a dessert, if you played extra.
So she knew how to motivate you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She motivated me. So I started to learn to read and play, classical pieces.
So at this time, you're still kind of hearing jazz music in the
Yeah,
household.
I'm still dreaming, but I'm seeing everything then too, country western music and on the radio, gospel music.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of music around. My mother wrote poetry, and she wrote songs, so there was music always around. When I was about 11 or 12, rock and roll came on the scene.
Yeah.
People like Fats Domino were happening. Also, I like to sing. I sang in a doo-wop group, so sang a cappella.
How cool.
And then my uncle became a jazz DJ. Needless to say, I had access to all these great records with Art Blakey and Max Roach and all of the jazz greats. So I immediately was hooked, on that music.
Is that what brought you into drums?
Drums came as a result. I mean, I was developing as a pianist.
Yeah.
And so when I went to high school, there was a saxophone player who was into Charlie Parker, wanted to form a group, and he said, "Man, you gotta listen to Charlie Parker." Of course, my uncle had all these records.
Yeah.
And so I had started listening to Charlie Parker and to the piano players that played that. We had a high school band, which I played bass, acoustic bass, double bass for half a semester, and then switched to the percussion department, playing bass drum, snare drum. We also had practice rooms. So There was a clarinet player who played bass and a flutist who played drums, and we would get together and play
How great.
jam sessions, you know.
And that would be at the school?
Yeah, the high school, yeah, vocational school.
Yeah, yeah.
Was playing like Ahmad Jamal's, you know, compositions, and there was a great jazz scene in Chicago.
Mm.
You know, Chicago had a lot of mixture of genres of music.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, you know, I played functions and played, you know, polkas, waltzes, and bar mitzvahs, and
So still playing piano
still playing the
with
piano.
these groups, all different types of gigs.
Yeah, then finally a drummer from one of my combos left his drums at my house. I spent about a month on them. You know, I was drawn to them, but didn't know how really naturally they appealed to me. So I spent about a month on the drums, playing with records, and getting the 26 rudiments and practicing those. It came to me naturally. You know, I sort of, you know, the coordination and everything just came to me naturally. So I decided to develop the drums up to the level of my piano.
How great.
So I got a lot of experience working with really, really seasoned musicians
Yeah.
that knew more than me, but sort of took me under their wing and saw that I had some talent to offer. And you know, I made it a point to put myself in those situations that challenged me and helped me develop.
Fantastic. You know, it's amazing how often sometimes piano and drumming, there's a lot of great drummers out there that also play piano. There seems to be a real, you know, relationship there.
Well, why shouldn't there be? Because it's part of the percussion family.
Yeah,
really.
absolutely, absolutely. So maybe some of the independence and ability came from that.
People sometimes have a tendency to separate the two.
Yeah.
You know, I get quite often get asked, well, what's the difference between playing drums and the piano?
Interesting.
You do use four limbs, I mean, with the piano. I mean, not as often as you do on the drums.
Yeah.
But you're using the fingers, but you're also playing rhythm.
Yeah.
You know, the use of percussion with the piano and drums. You can I can name a few pianists that to me are drummers. You know, like Chick, Herbie.
Chick plays
Keith
great drums.
Jarrett.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Keith played drums.
Interesting.
Gonzalo Rubalcaba played drums. They had the sense of percussion
Yeah.
and incorporate that in. So one feeds the other, really. You know, the piano for its orchestral range, but the drums also, because you know we have the drum set, so we tune these drums
Yeah.
to various pitches according to the music.
Yeah.
I'm always hearing orchestrally when I play the drum set. So that, and cymbals, which, you know, over the years I've come to design with Sabian.
Yeah, you've got an incredible line.
So, you know, in the cymbals there's orchestral sounds. You know, you have the low gong sound, and then you have the overtones.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hear chords in them. So I'm always hearing the orchestra, so you could say that the piano is, or the orchestral sound is part of my concept.
Interesting. That kind of explains when you're playing a solo, you really are laying down this orchestration composition. That's probably what sucks people in to hear that and be involved. It's fantastic. So you're working at this time. You're playing with different musicians. Are you now, you know, at a professional level where you're making an income from playing music?
Yeah, I mean, this is in Chicago. I was playing with different artists like Eddie Harris.
Yeah.
Iris Sullivan. Eddie Harris is the one who I subbed for Harold Jones,
Yeah.
who was then his drummer and who was finishing his degree studies at Roosevelt. And Eddie knew I played piano, you know, and he said to me, yeah, Jack, you play piano. You know, you play good, decent piano. He said, but drums, he said, you're a natural. He said, you know, and sooner or later you're going to have to make a decision which one was going to be your voice. He says, because I play trombone, I play piano, and he played all these instruments. He said, but you know, I need to make the saxophone my main instrument.
It became his main voice. Yeah, interesting.
So he said, but if you make drums your primary instrument, you're going to go far. You know, I said, okay.
That's like a mentor. It's almost like he was mentoring you at that time, you know?
Well, yes. I mean, he was one of the mentors. The other mentor was Muhal Richard Abrams, who just recently passed. And he was involved in a very broad aspect of composition and improvisation of music. And he had what was called, it was a forerunner to the AACM, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians in Chicago. And he had an experimental orchestra, which I was a part of, and a lot of other musicians were part of. Joseph Jarman, Roscoe Mitchell, just to name a few. Henry Threadgill. And so he had this orchestra, and smaller groups came out of that.
Wow.
And so he encouraged us to, you know, to write our own music, to present the music in a way that was on a very fine level. And he encouraged me also to go to New York. And, you know, his door was always open for musicians to come in and you know, ask questions and get advice, you know, not only musical, but, you know, personal as well.
Deep, very, very deep. Were you doing any composition at that time? Were you composing?
Well, I started to write. I started writing more after I came to New York.
Yeah.
I was a band leader. I formed groups. I had trios. I had quintettes, and I accompanied singers, and I played solo piano. So I did a variety of things.
And there was tons of places to sit in. There was an incredible amount.
Chicago was a great place for that.
Deep for that. So you had a chance to play and sit in with John Coltrane.
Yeah.
What was that like? And how old were you at the time?
18. 19,
okay, so you're in your late teens.
Yeah, I'm not great with numbers, but I was a big fan of Coltrane's, and you know, I've been playing with the records. And in the club he was playing in was a place called McKee Fitzhugh's. He was a DJ. He owned this jazz club. It was one of those railroad.
Oh, like a railroad car.
Yeah, well, it was a railroad bar. You know, it was like, you know, it was long, and then there was the booths and bar chairs, and then there was a mirror so the musicians could see themselves, you know, when they were playing. It was a small stage, and there was a spinning piano up there, and Elvin was late for the last set, and I would play the jam sessions there on the Monday nights, and so the place was packed. The key said to John, he said, "Listen, you know, it's packed. It's the last set, and Jack DeJohnette, he's a good drummer. You know, let him go play the last set with you." And Coltrane just nodded his head and went up to the bandstand. Never asked how good is he or can he play, but there was this trust.
Yeah.
And so I was able to hold my own
Yeah.
playing with him. But it was a really highlight of my life or the career then, because when I played with him, he was like a magnet, you know.
Yeah.
When he played, you could feel. And I really understood why Elvin had to play the way he played.
Interesting.
As much as you could give him, he just, like a sponge, he just soaked up the energy. He needed that fire, you know, from the drum.
Yeah.
To push him, and it, you know, it was in turn. It was a reciprocal thing that happened with him and Elvin.
What an incredible opportunity to have that, just to have that clarity of where jazz was at that time, to be thrown into that situation.
Oh man, yeah.
That's a game changer.
Well, it really fueled my confidence in my abilities to be a better musician.
Yeah. So now you make the move down to New York. What was it like when you first got here?
Well, when I first got here, I came up with a drum set on a Greyhound bus and a set of gray pearl drums, so simple, no cases.
Yeah.
And I checked in at the Sloan House YMCA, went uptown to Minton's, and Freddie Hubbard was playing there. And I sat there with Freddie, gave me an initiation, Freddie called just one of those things at a Max Roach tempo or Charlie Parker up tempo.
Yeah.
You know, ba 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 ba, 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 ba. But you know, I had practiced with those records, so I was prepared for it. After I finished, John Patton, the organist, was in the house, and he said to me, he said, "Man, if you have a set of drums, and you got a gig."
That easy.
And that's when I first decided I was going to stay in New York. Then I moved downtown. Charles Tolliver, who was a trumpeter and composer, had been working with Jackie McLean. I used to, you know, go around and sit in at a lot of different places. Charles told me, he said, listen, you know, Charles and I had spent a lot of time and jammed together, and he said he had been working with Jackie McLean. He said, man, Jackie's going to hire you, he's going to call you. You know, and I said, oh. Sure enough, I got a call from Jackie to go to work with him.
Yeah.
And at the time, the group was, I think it was Larry Ridley and Bobby Hutcherson.
Beautiful.
You know, vibes.
Beautiful.
So we did some gigs around New York and traveled some. I remember one experience. You know, Jackie McLean was very kind to me in the sense that I was playing too loud. And it was during the time a lot of drummers were influenced by Elvin and the volume that he played.
Yeah.
I was playing, you know, louder than I should have been. And so on the break, Jackie called me aside. He said, Jackie, can you hear me when you're playing at that volume? And you know, I was young and cocky and full of myself. I said, well, yeah, I can hear. He said, well, I don't know. He said, you might want to play down a little more so you can hear, you know, what I'm playing. When I say he was kind, he could have just said, man, you know,
He could have just
get the hell out of here.
Totally.
Yeah, but he, you know, he told me that, and I walked off a little bit in a huff, and then I calmed down. So next time when I went up, I played with more finesse and more taste, and so I never forgot that.
Boy, these lessons seem like they were being given to you. This is university education that's happening on the job.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's that intense. But it seems like you were really prepared when they called certain tempos. So you were putting time into your instrument, playing along to records. So your technique and your chops and your ability and your focus, you were prepared.
Yeah, no, I spent many hours.
Yeah.
Many hours, you know, playing with the records,
Yeah.
working on my technique,
Yeah.
going to sessions,
Yeah.
playing as much as possible to be the best I could be.
Were there any drummers that you took lessons from at all, or that you got together with?
Well, Clifford Jarvis showed me some thumb techniques for sticking
Interesting.
that were useful, sometimes talking about rudiments and things like that.
Yeah.
And the thing with rudiments for me was I wanted not to sound rudimental, but I wanted to utilize the rudiments in a way that, not deceptive, but I use a lot of singles, doubles, sevens, 11s,
Yeah.
flams, and double stroke rolls, you know, interlaced with bass drum,
Yeah.
hi-hat, so that it flows. You know, flows a lot, so it doesn't sound more, not marching drum, but, you know.
Oh, it's not stiff at
more
all.
vertical.
Yeah, it's not stiff.
More of a flowing
Yeah.
way of, a liquid way.
Interesting. You know, your fluidity when you're playing, it always amazed me because it didn't matter what hands or what feet or what sounds you were looking for. If you wanted something to happen between your left hand and your right foot, it just kind of happened. You just kind of it's almost like you willed it that way. It just happened so relaxed and so fluid. So a lot of that came from just playing along to records and just listening to other players.
Playing as much as possible.
Yeah.
Too. And the energy that flowed through me was pretty high energy.
Yeah.
And because I got that from seeing people like Miles and Coltrane and some of the musicians in Chicago that I played with, you know, Ira Sullivan,
Yeah.
for instance, John Gilmore,
Yeah.
Sun Ra. So I was, you know, had all these different people who played the music on such a high level. You know, I just wanted to be the best I could be. I never would imagine I would wind up playing with these people I played with, you know, on the records.
Yeah, how amazing. But what's amazing is that you were constantly doing this research, and then all of a sudden, how did Miles step into the picture? And how did that lead into Bitches Brew? How did that all come about?
Before Miles came into the picture, we have to look at, I was freelancing around New York, and I played with Betty Carter, Bill Evans.
Well, Bill Evans, you know, Freddie Hubbard.
But Miles, I had an opportunity to play with Miles before I officially joined him. And there was a time when Tony was unavailable to work with Miles. Miles had come around to Slugs, you know, that was on the Lower East Side, the jazz club there. Yeah. And I was playing with Jackie McLean. And it was actually to Jackie McLean that Tony Williams got the job with Miles, because Jackie hired Tony and Miles heard Tony. And Miles came down to hear me play, and Jackie said to me, he said, "Miles is gonna hire you one day." He says, "We got the same taste in drummers."
So Miles heard you there, and
yeah, and so I got the call to play with Herbie and Wayne and Ron Carter.
What was that like? We had Ron here doing a talk with him, and it's just so deep to hear some of the stories. You know, and all these names that you're mentioning, that's part of what I like about the series of these younger musicians listening to it. As you mention these names, I want them to do the research. And, you know, Sun Ra, go do the research of who these great musicians were, and have them do their homework for it. So you hook up with Miles now, you're playing. How did Bitches Brew come into the picture?
Well, this was around the time, you know, we were talking about Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
So Hendrix was around that time, and I believe then the atmosphere for experimentation in music in a lot of the different genres was kind of crossing over.
Yeah.
And we had the FM stations were now, you know, was the new frontier, so to say, so to speak.
Yeah.
This was a period of creativity in the recording studio with Miles, where he gathered, you know, his favorite musicians on a perspective instruments, like drums and reeds, bass, percussion. And of course his producer, Tio Macero, who's underrated for the productional contributions he made to Miles' music, you know, organizing it. So Miles was in a creative mood, of a process of utilizing the studio to go in every day and experiment with grooves. I mean, a lot of the music is not that structured, you know, in terms of like A, B, C.
Form,
form. And so it's a matter of grooves and sometimes a few notes or a few melodies. And when the groove got right, I mean, you know, he turned the tape on and just let it roll. And when it got right, he would cue a soloist in and then take it out. And so the tape would just be rolling. So documented the work in progress. So days and days and days of this, you know, just would go on. We never thought about how important these records would be. It was just, you knew it was important because Miles was there, and he was, you know, moving forward with something different in his concept. If you listen to it, a lot of it is the simplicity of the music, but the grooves are what's happening, and then he was utilizing acoustic and electric bass.
And electric instruments, the grooves was just so deep. It was just such a, and you could kind of feel everyone speaking to each other within the music.
Well, that process really, you know, a lot of the pop groups, that's what they did, but they spent even longer time, you know, playing the groove over and over and over until it's set in the right place. But this was a little different in terms of getting that spontaneity as the groove was developing.
Yeah.
And capturing it on recordings and then editing it and putting it together so it told the story, you know, in the best way possible.
Well, what classic music that was. It's just around forever and still as fresh now as it was back in the 60s, which is you know, beautifully powerful. Were you still playing piano at the time? Were you doing some composition at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing the piano, but not working with it. I just used it in terms of writing.
Yeah.
And I hadn't made a recording as a leader until, I guess, 68 or 69
Yeah.
for the Milestone
Right.
label with Orrin Keep News.
Right.
But I forgot to mention, in coming up in Chicago, I liked to play a wind instrument, which was the melodica,
Yeah.
which I used to go around and play and sit in on sessions, because it gave me another way of expression, you know, with the air, that you, in a way of speaking that you couldn't do with the piano.
Yeah.
So I used to go sit in and got a lot of experience playing with the melodica. And I used it in New York and used it on some compositions. Well, actually my first record. It took me a year before I was ready to record.
Yeah.
He said, well, think about what it is you want to do and then come back to me. So I wanted to utilize my keyboard skills. I also wanted to have Roy Haynes, who I met when I first came to New York. He was kind of like a mentor to me. He wasn't like a mentor to me. And we used to go around and hang out in New York, go listen to music, and sometimes sit in together, me playing the organ or piano. I really had a lot of respect for Roy's art on the drums.
Yeah.
So I asked him, would he play drums on my recording? So what I did was I had Benny Maupin on tenor saxophone and flute, and Stanley Cowell on piano, acoustic piano, electric piano, and then two basses, Eddie Gomez and Miroslav Vitos.
Beautiful.
So I would figure out a way to write music that utilized this. And so it was very exciting. It was challenging, but very exciting for me. And the blend of the saxophone and the melodica worked out pretty well. And then playing melodica with Roy Haynes was a hell of a challenge too. Because Roy at the time was, you know, he would always overlap bar lines or play accents deliberately on an and of three or and of
in
four.
unusual places, very unusual.
Yeah, if you weren't, you know, you didn't know where you were, you get thrown off. So it was good for me to ground myself to know where it was. I mean, of course, I did the same when I was playing, but you know, it's one thing when you're throwing it out, it's another thing
when you're receiving it. Right?
Yeah.
Where do you think your creativity comes from? As long as I've known you, you've always been this creative force. Where do you think that comes from?
I have a saying that I said comes from the library of creative consciousness. If you tap into that, which we all have the facility, ability to do, the possibilities are endless. You know, this is also easy. You can also get stuck.
Yeah.
Where you just do what you know and you're comfortable with. But I do like to put myself in situations where I'm coming up with, you know, fresh ideas.
Yeah.
And even now, I feel like there's things I need to work on to move out of things that I'm comfortable doing. And you know, you have to push yourself.
So you're still challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Are there young musicians that you're starting to see that, you know, like a lot of these elders that saw you're playing? Are you starting to see some young musicians that have special ability and talent that's inspiring?
Yeah. Well, you know, Roy's grandson, Marcus Gilmore.
Yeah.
Really, really happening. Chris Dave.
Yes, Chris Dave was phenomenal.
Really got some different stuff.
Yeah.
Giuliano.
Mark Giuliano.
Mark Giuliano.
Boy, it's amazing that you mentioned that. Mark is a young, talented, you know, really enthusiastic jazz artist that's really kind of pushing the edge also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nasheed Waits.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So there's a good, you know, level of lineage that's carrying on a
Yeah.
lot of this intensity of jazz.
Oh yeah, there's even probably some more. I mean, there's,
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard some amazing young drummers. I mean, the drum department is doing really well.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I see is there's so much talent. How how they're going to survive and work and make a living
Yeah.
in this environment now where everything is streamed or downloaded.
Yeah. There was a video that I saw of you and Roy Haynes tap dancing, trading some fours and some eights. Was tap a part of your? How did that come into play?
Well, that's an interesting question because I used to play at reviews. There would be tap dancers.
Yeah.
But I didn't get really into the deeper aspect of it until I started to experience Savion Glover, who I actually first started playing with him when he was 16 at a concert at Carnegie Hall. Jerry Allen was the pianist, Ron Carter was on bass, and Savion was going through playing tribute to the legends, Sandman, Jimmy Slide, the great tap dancers. But to me, tap and drums are, at the hip because they're doing rudiments.
Absolutely.
It's the same. It's just it's a percussion discussion.
Absolutely, a percussion.
It's a percussion discussion, and later, Savion sees himself as a soloist, like a horn player. He sees himself that way.
Yeah.
And when I saw him, I call him the John Coltrane of tap because he does phenomenal things.
Yeah.
Rhythmically, and then with the moves.
Yeah.
Everything is really concentrated in the feet. But he is a way of setting up a stage with the mics and different places where he can get pitches, these different
How amazing.
microsonic tempo pitches
Yeah.
from his drum. And so if I play something pitch-wise, it changes, and he'll play it back. There's a lot of call and response.
Yeah.
And then a lot of accompanying each other.
Yeah.
While one solos, the other one does it. And then a collective improvisation. The connections, it's immediate. And it goes from 0 to 200 whenever we get together.
Yeah. What's funny is that these players like Roy Haynes and Buddy Rich and Steve Gadd and Ed Thigpen, they really were great tap dancers. And it seems like there's almost an importance to understand tap to better understand the fluidity of drum set.
Well, the correlation, is there in the sense that Savion is an excellent drummer.
Yeah.
At the sound checks, I play some piano with him. He plays the drum. But he did something that was really amazing. That my wife Lydia and I went to see him play in Albany. It was called Classical Savion. And for those who haven't seen it, they should really see it.
Check it out.
It was amazing because he had a string section there, and they had to all know how to improvise. And he was doing Bach, and Mozart,
Really?
and tapping to it.
Yeah.
There were kids of all ages, and it was really like educating the audience with something that most people knew these works. And then he would introduce the players by tapping something to them, and then they had to answer back with an improvisation. And then at the end, he brought a jazz rhythm section, and he played, some jazz improvisations with the orchestra. But you see this thread showing how he would literally tap the notes. Some Mozart, tapping, with this ensemble, And when we first got there, we thought, oh, well, let's see what's happening. And man, after about 5 minutes, you're like, whoa, this is deep.
It's deep, I can imagine.
Yeah, and so, he's like at the cutting edge. And he's, educating people, about tap. Still, he's giving it more visibility.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like bring on the noise, bring on the funk.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely a trailblazer.
That is
And
beautiful.
been a pleasure working with him. I mean, he's out now working with Marcus Gilmore.
Interesting.
But he's done things with McCoy Tyner, and he's done things with Roy. You know, so he keeps it, you know, putting himself in different situations.
Boy, it's amazing that you keep yourself exposed to all this here and informed about all this information. You know, that really is a part of the magic of what creates Jack DeJohnette for sure.
Yeah.
We have all these young listeners that are listening to here, and there are some, you know, incredible, enthusiastic musicians out there.
Mm-hmm.
In closing, what would you say to this next generation, Jack, that could give them advice and hope to follow their dreams in music?
Well, first of all, love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Listen to as much, you know, different types of music as you can, and ask questions. Try and play with musicians that are more experienced than you. Always have a positive intention when you come on stage to play, because the music has the power to help uplift people, lift their spirits up. So, you know, you have that intention, it certainly, you know, definitely goes out into the area you're playing in.
Yeah.
Joy, which is very important.
Yeah.
To people joy in the music, because right now more than ever we need that.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, just keep that spirit, and make sure that you know, even though it's your profession, that you still find fun with it, so that it becomes a job.
Yeah.
You know, it's your art, and it's your way of living, your way of making a living.
Yeah.
But keep that in perspective.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that positive intention. That really is a very, very two powerful words put together. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And if there's ever an endless library of creative consciousness, you are the one that owns the library and keeps on filling it up. I think you do.
I share some of it.
You do,
with
sure
a
do.
lot of
Share.
other people.
You do that so well, man.
Yeah.
Jack, on behalf of the Artist Series and the Sessions, we thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank
my
you
pleasure.
so much. Fantastic.
Pleasure talking to you.